What up, Jippers? It's time to shine the Jip light on Starlink Battle for Atlas, releasing October 16th for the Switch, PS4 and Xbox One. This was another game that I was lucky enough to get hands on with and play at EGX2018, and I'd already pre-ordered the game before that after originally seeing some pictures from the game being passed around on Twitter as if they were No Man's Sky Next before the update for that game had actually dropped. So that's what got me onto this game in the first place, and then after looking into it a bit more and liking what I saw, I went ahead and pre-ordered it, and now I've had a chance to play it. So let's jump into this one and find out a little bit more. Admittedly, as a No Man's Sky fan, the aesthetic of Starlink does of course instantly draw me in, but make no mistakes, this is not a No Man's Sky clone or even a competitor. Starlink is a very, very different game in pretty much every possible way. So if you're looking for more No Man's Sky, do not go into Starlink thinking that that's what you're going to get here. It's ultimately a more stylized and arcadey feeling ship combat kind of game, with battles taking place on the surface of unique and beautifully handcrafted alien looking worlds or out in open space. The combat is very fast paced and fluid. You're going to be taking on waves and waves of enemies in quick succession and often dealing with these larger boss style battles that have little puzzle elements built into them. So for example, when I was playing the demo build that was shown at EGX, I was tasked with heading to a few objectives, taking out some smaller groups and waves of enemies before eventually encountering this huge machine type enemy that acted almost like a little boss battle. And as part of that, I had to take out a number of these pulsating power nodes while I was trying to fend off waves and waves of smaller little grunts. And when I managed to take down these nodes, it would expose a weak area on the big boss machine that would open up for a couple of seconds and allow me to deal a heavy hit of damage to it. And then after a few rounds of repeating that pattern, I was able to win the battle and collect some cool loot and experience. The combat and movement feels reasonably fluid, but certainly takes some getting used to. It's played from a third-person ship perspective, and while on a planet's surface, you've actually got two distinct flight options that can be toggled easily with the press of a button. The first of those is free flight. This is kind of what you would expect. It simply allows you to fly around freely in the planet's atmosphere in all directions, and you can also hit a little boost button that will make you go much faster if you're trying to travel long distances on a planet between objectives and that kind of thing. So this free flight mode, it lets you fly around in the air, ascend and descend at will, but when you're actually in a battle on a planet's surface, you're likely going to want to switch into the second option, which is a sort of hover mode, and it essentially tethers your ship to the ground and makes it control more like a speeder or hovercraft, quickly strafing left or right, back and forward, and allowing you to perform these little fast dodge roll maneuvers to either side, and that lets you quickly avoid blaster fire that's heading your way, almost like a strafe type mechanic. And while in that mode, you can also perform a boost move that acts like a jump, so this will just pop you up directly in the air and back down again, and that's another thing that's useful for dodging incoming fire or getting the drop on an enemy. And you can of course switch back and forth between those two flight modes at any point, including in the middle of combat on a planet's surface, if you want to try and head up into the air or approach things from a different angle. And all of this plays out really quickly in the game. I can see things becoming incredibly frantic, especially if there are larger battles in the game. And you're definitely going to want a bit of practice to try and get used to the mechanics and get all of this down and working smoothly. Because there are a lot of things that you can do, and it is very fast paced. So you're going to want to get the hang of it so that you can kind of switch between things and pull off some interesting moves. But it does feel like there is a good level of depth in the combat and movement, and that should allow for some cool sequences once you do pick things up a bit, even though it is very much on the rapid shooting arcade style of playstyle rather than a more in-depth flight simulation type of game. And that of course is 100% fine as long as you expect that and you know that going into the game. If you're coming at this thinking you're going to get No Man's Sky or thinking you're going to get something heavy simulation like Elite Dangerous, this is not that, so just make sure you know what this game is before you jump into it. Now, one thing I do want to flag at this stage is that I was playing on the Switch version when I was at EGX. It was fine, but it certainly wasn't up to par with the other console versions on display. It didn't look or feel as smooth as I would have hoped, and there were definitely some issues with the ship skipping some frames and glitch moving during jumps and things. It looked a lot flatter on that big screen with the draw distance and textures being diluted compared to the Xbox One X version that was on display right next to it. Of course, that shouldn't be a major surprise to anyone. The consoles have very, very different specs, and I'm sure playing this on the Switch using that handheld mode on that tiny screen is going to look pretty freaking incredible. But that is just something to be aware of. If you're one of those people that has the choice of which console you get it on, and you're not super worried about being able to play it portably or the exclusive Star Fox content that only comes on the Switch version, then I would suggest going for the more powerful consoles if you are someone that really wants to get the most out of this game visually, because it can be pretty freaking stunning, especially on those more powerful consoles. Starlink does of course have a story with some neat looking cutscenes to break up all of the madness, and you will get regular comms coming through during your missions with friendly and enemy characters popping up on screen to talk to you and talk you through objectives and things. And you can also spend your time flying around on the planets in between the objectives, just exploring, scanning creatures and plants, collecting more loot, and hunting down XP as you go. The scanning mechanic is quite cool. That lets you learn a little bit more about the worlds and their inhabitants, although it did feel a little bit clunky to me when I was trying this out. You do have to maintain a certain distance between you and whatever it is that you're trying to scan, almost like a little sweet spot where you have to kind of balance your ship and move it back and forward to stay there for a couple of seconds while you're completing the scan, although that was probably made worse for me because I wasn't playing on the game system or the controller that I'm used to, and I suspect that's going to be a very minor point that's probably not going to mean much to you once you've got the technique down and you've played it for a bit longer than I did. So far that should give you a fairly good idea of what you do in Starlink and how it plays, but there is of course another major aspect to the game that we haven't talked about yet. Starlink features an optional Toys to Life component that allows you to buy, collect, build and customize these little toy starship models in real life that you can then actually use within the game in real time as you play to customize, switch out your weapons and mods and upgrade your ship on the fly. Now I imagine for most people that is instantly going to be either a love or hate type thing. The little ships do look really cool. They remind me of little Gundam wing models and they've got a nice level of detail to them, but of course if you do really want to get into that side of things, you're going to be spending a fair bit of real life money on these figures just so that you can use them in the game. I did try this all out on the Switch version, slotting in my little pilot figure into the controller, then putting my ship over the top of that and choosing a few little weapon upgrades for the wings. It was fun, it is a little bit gimmicky, but it was kind of cool being able to quickly slot in different weapon mods on the wings as I was playing, and then seeing that instantly reflected in the game with my weapon actually changing as soon as I plugged it in. Although you can of course do all of this in the game without having to bother with the figures at all. So if you're not interested in that, then you don't have to be buying the figures, you don't have to be plugging them into your controller. My only reservation around all of this is we don't really know how easy it's going to be to upgrade your gear and your weapons and all that kind of stuff in the game if you don't buy these ships or if you don't have them. They have made it very clear that you don't need this Toys to Life component. It's not like an absolute must-have. It is optional, so I would hope that it's not going to have much of an impact at all on the game experience if you're choosing to avoid it completely, but I'm not 100% clear on that. So just be aware of that going into the game. You might end up buying some of these toys even if you don't actually use them, because buying them does get you the digital unlocks as well as the figures. Now, one other thing to mention is the scale of the game. The worlds seem reasonably sized with some cool variety within them, and from what I saw of the planet that I was on, they can be really freaking stunning with some interesting creature and plant life, trees, rivers, mountains, and strange and interesting buildings, as well of course as a ton of enemies. The game is not an exploration game, so you're not going to spend an endless amount of hours soaking in every little tiny detail on a single planet in amazement, but it does certainly seem like there's more than enough depth here to make each planet interesting, and I wouldn't be surprised if you had more than a few breathtaking moments when you visit a new planet for the first time or find a new creature walking around for that first time. There are going to be some nice little experiences there when you see this kind of thing. There are 7 planets in total in the game. All of them are set within one star system, the Atlas star system, and that of course forms the backdrop for the main story, with your character and their little crew fighting against the evil Forgotten Legion in the battle for Atlas. And one final cool feature with the game that I have to give credit for, as more and more games these days have moved away from this in recent years, is that you can play Starlink 2-player split screen with a friend or family member at home on the same system. So thank you very much for that one. Really cool to see that, and it's just such a fun thing to do in real life, actually sitting there with 2 people playing on the same screen. More games need to start doing it again. Maybe I'm just nostalgic, but I think that's really cool. So, Starlink Battle for Atlas, a unique planet-hopping, fast-paced starship combat adventure game with some interesting mechanics, wonderful visuals, fun ship and weapon customization, and a strong nostalgia-inducing arcadey style vibe with some neat looking collectible toys if you want them. I'm keen to jump into it, and I want to find out if it's ultimately going to be the kind of game that really grabs me or not. But in the meantime, I'd love to hear what you guys think of Starlink in the comments below. That's it for this one, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it and found it useful. Remember to let me know if you did with a like and of course a comment. You can also support my dream on Patreon too, so take a look at that if you can, and I will catch you in another video very soon. Take care, guys, and peace. Just want to give a very big thank you to every single one of my current Patreon supporters: Anarchy, Dale from the Atlas Hub, Vogear, David D, Dead D Reza, Forgotten Stoner, Heath, Husband Vader, Exo, Joanne Zay, Johnny, Good Handed, Lukash M, Mac for a Day, Madeline J, Malin Dog, Mark F, Amras, Neil B, NTB, Ongrad, Autumn Long, Paul Lawson, Rasmus K, Legion 245, Shiraka Majelli, Samwise Gekji, The Golden Gek, The Portrait Dude, Todd C, Todd H, Ty the Blazer, Vanilla, and Wyo. You guys are the best. Thank you so much.